Hello, and welcome to the channel. The story you're about to hear is about the most glamorous era in American entertainment. Yet beneath the silk gowns and spotlight lay a darkness that consumed some of its brightest stars. What happens when unlimited fame meets unlimited access? When the studio system that creates gods also destroys them? Picture the MGM lot in 1944. The sun beats down on sound stages the size of aircraft hangars. Inside, under lights hot enough to melt makeup, a 16-year-old girl named Judy Garland is shooting her 18th hour of the day. Her hands shake, not from nerves, from the pills they gave her that morning. Benzedrine, the studio doctor called them. Pep pills. Energy. You need energy, don't you, Judy? You need to be camera ready. You need to smile. At the commissary, Clark Gable orders his third scotch before lunch. Nobody blinks. Errol Flynn excuses himself to the bathroom every 45 minutes. Everyone knows why, but nobody says anything. Barbara Stanwyck lights her 20th cigarette of the morning. Robert Mitchum shows up still drunk from the night before and delivers a perfect take on the first try. This is Hollywood. This is normal. The medicine cabinets of the stars in the 1,940 seconds and 1,950 seconds looked like pharmacy stockrooms. Benzedrine and dexedrine to wake up, Nembutal and Seconal to sleep, morphine for pain, codeine for coughs, paregoric for nerves, laudanum for everything else. And that was just what the studio doctors prescribed. What the stars procured on their own time was their business. As long as they showed up for work, most of it was legal. That's what people forget now. The amphetamines that would later be classified as dangerous controlled substances were handed out like aspirin. Diet pills for the women who needed to stay thin for the camera. Energy pills for everyone who needed to work 20-hour days. Sleeping pills for the insomnia that came from taking too many energy pills. Pain pills for the injuries that came from doing your own stunts, because the studio demanded authenticity. The studio system owned these people, not employed them, owned them. 7-year contracts that dictated everything. When you woke up, what you ate, who you dated, who you married, whether you could get pregnant, whether you could keep the baby. They owned your face, your body, your name. They could loan you out to other studios like equipment. They could suspend you without pay if you refused a role. They could destroy your career with a single phone call to every studio head in town. And if you needed help managing the pressure, well, the studio doctor made house calls. He had a black bag full of solutions. Can't sleep? Here's Seconal. Can't wake up? Here's Benzedrine. Can't stop eating? Here's dexedrine. Injured on set? Here's morphine. Just don't miss tomorrow's call time. Don't gain weight. Don't age. Don't be human. Louis B. Mayer ran MGM like a benevolent dictator. He called his stars his children. He meant it like a Roman patriarch meant it, with absolute power over their lives. He had Judy Garland's teeth capped, her nose considered for surgery, her body criticized daily. He loaned out Elizabeth Taylor's contract to another studio as punishment for some perceived slight. He arranged marriages to hide homosexuality, forced abortions to prevent scandals, paid off police when stars got arrested. But Mayer wasn't uniquely cruel. Every studio operated the same way. Warner Brothers, Paramount, RKO, 20th Century Fox. The system demanded it. Movies cost money. Stars were investments. Investments needed to be protected, maintained, controlled. If a star developed a drinking problem, you hired someone to keep them sober on set. If they developed a drug problem, you made sure they had a reliable supply, so they didn't go looking for it on the street where photographers might see them. The publicity machines were magnificent. A star could be falling apart, showing up 3 hours late every day, forgetting their lines, barely able to stand, and the public would read about how dedicated they were, how professional, how gracious. The gossip columnists were controlled. Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons had power, but even they played by certain rules. You could hint, you could insinuate, you could not tell the truth. Not if you wanted to keep your sources. What we're about to explore is the cost of that system. The human beings who were fed into the dream factory and came out as ghosts. Some literally, some just spiritually. We'll trace the patterns. The young talent discovered in small towns. The contracts signed before they understood what they meant. The first pills prescribed. The increasing doses. The first drink that became the 10th drink. The prescription that became an addiction. The addiction that became a death sentence. We'll meet Judy Garland, given her first amphetamines at 13 years old by a studio that needed her perky and thin. Errol Flynn, the most beautiful man in Hollywood, rotting from the inside with morphine and alcohol. Barbara Payton, who fell from stardom to street walking in less than a decade. Gig Young, who seemed to have it all until he murdered his wife and killed himself in a drug and alcohol-fueled psychotic break. Veronica Lake, who died alone in obscurity. William Holden, who bled to death drunk on his apartment floor, undiscovered, for 4 days. These stories aren't cautionary tales. They're not morality plays. They're archaeology. We're excavating the real history beneath the glamorous surface. The golden age of Hollywood wasn't golden for everyone who lived through it. For some, it was a death machine dressed in silk and lit by Klieg lights. The films remain, perfect, preserved, eternal. The performances are still magnificent, but the people who gave those performances paid in ways the camera never showed. This is their story, not the studio-approved version, the real one. She was born Frances Ethel Gum on the 10th of June 1922 in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, a small town, a vaudeville family. Her parents ran a movie theater and performed on the side. Frances was on stage before she could properly walk. 2 years old, singing Jingle Bells on Christmas Eve while her sisters harmonized. The audience loved her. That applause was the first drug. The Gum sisters toured the vaudeville circuit through the late 1000, 920 seconds, and early 1000, 930 seconds. Frances was always the standout, not just talented, undeniable, a voice that seemed impossible from such a small body. By the time she was 10, people in the industry were noticing. By 12, she was auditioning for studios in Los Angeles. Her father drove her to every appointment. Her mother pushed harder than any stage mother in history. MGM signed her in 1935. She was 13 years old. They immediately changed her name to Judy Garland. Fresh start, new identity. The contract gave MGM control of every aspect of her life for the next 7 years, with options to extend. She couldn't choose her roles, couldn't choose her image, couldn't even choose her lunch. Louis B. Mayer looked at the 13-year-old girl and saw a problem. She wasn't conventionally pretty, not like the other girls under contract. Her nose was wrong, her figure was stocky. He allegedly called her "my little hunchback." Whether he actually said it or not, the message was clear. You need to be fixed. The studio put her on her first diet immediately. 1,200 calories a day. For a 13-year-old. For a 13-year-old who was rehearsing and filming and attending the studio school for 8 to 12 hours daily, she was hungry all the time. She began to obsess about food. The obsession would last her entire life. But the hunger made her tired, made her less energetic on camera, made her less, in their words, sparkly. The solution arrived in a small bottle from the studio doctor, Benzedrine, amphetamine sulfate. Take one in the morning. It'll give you energy. It'll also suppress your appetite. 2 problems, 1 solution. She was 14 years old. The pills worked exactly as advertised. She had energy. She didn't feel hungry. She could work longer hours, smile brighter, dance harder. She also couldn't sleep. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. Her thoughts came too fast. The solution arrived in another bottle. Seconal, barbiturates. Take 1 at night. You'll sleep like a baby. This was 1,936. This was considered medicine. The studio doctor was doing his job. Keep the talent functional. Keep them working. Keep them profitable. By the time Judy was cast in The Wizard of Oz in 1938, she was 16 years old and completely dependent on amphetamines and barbiturates. The production was brutal. 6 months of shooting. 10 to 12-hour days under lights that reached 100 degrees. The Technicolor cameras required 3 times the normal light. The soundstage was an oven. She weighed 72 pounds. The studio had her corseted to flatten her developing figure. Dorothy needed to look like a Kansas farm girl, not like a young woman. They put caps on her teeth. They dyed her hair. They worked her until she collapsed, then gave her more pills to get up again. The other actors noticed. Ray Bolger, who played the Scarecrow, tried to protect her when he could, but what could he do? The studio controlled everything, and Judy showed up. She hit her marks. She delivered the performance. That voice, singing Over the Rainbow, achingly pure and sad. She was singing about escape while trapped in a system that owned her. During the Oz production, she was smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. The studio encouraged it. Cigarettes suppress appetite. Anything to keep her thin. 16 years old, chain smoking, addicted to amphetamines and barbiturates, and about to become the most famous teenager in America. The Wizard of Oz premiered in August 1939. It was a moderate success, not the phenomenon it would become later. But Judy Garland was a star now, which meant the pressure increased. More films, more publicity, more control. The pills became routine, not something prescribed for a specific condition, just daily maintenance. Wake-up pills, work pills, sleep pills. The studio lot had multiple doctors on call. They all knew what the stars needed. The joke was that you could get anything prescribed at MGM except actual medical care. Need to lose weight? Here's Dexedrine. Need to work a 20-hour day? Here's more Benzedrine. Need to sleep 3 hours and wake up functional? Here's Seconal, and then more Benzedrine. Arthur Freed was a producer and songwriter at MGM, one of the most powerful men at the studio. He took a special interest in Judy. That interest was not fatherly. Years later, Judy would describe what happened in his office when she was still a teenager. The details varied in different tellings, but the core was always the same. Powerful man, young girl, no one to protect her, no one who would believe her. This was the culture. This was normal. By the time Judy was 18, she had already attempted suicide once. Pills, naturally. What else did she have access to? What else did she know? The studio covered it up. Exhaustion, the press was told. She's working too hard. She needs rest. 2 weeks later, she was back on set. The MGM years were supposed to be magical. That's what the publicity said. Judy Garland, the girl next door, America's sweetheart. The reality was a teenager addicted to prescription drugs, worked to exhaustion, sexually abused, and completely controlled by a corporation that saw her as a profit center. She made Babes in Arms, Strike Up the Band, Meet Me in Street Louie, all classics, all made while she was falling apart behind the carefully maintained facade. The pattern was established by the time she was 20. Amphetamines to wake up and work, barbiturates to sleep, alcohol to take the edge off both, more pills when the tolerance built up, doctor shopping when one doctor wouldn't prescribe enough. the studio enabling everything as long as she kept making films. She was MGM's most valuable asset in the 1,940 seconds. And like any valuable asset, they used her until she broke. Judy married David Rose in July 1941. She was 19. Rose was a composer, 12 years older, already successful. The marriage lasted 3 years. It was doomed from the start. Not because they didn't love each other, because Judy couldn't love anyone, including herself. The pills had hollowed her out. The pattern was locked in now. Benzedrine or dexedrine to wake up. Sometimes both. Coffee and cigarettes for breakfast. Work until early afternoon. More pills to get through the rest of the day. Alcohol starting around dinner. Barbiturates to sleep. 4 to 6 hours of unconsciousness. Then benzedrine to wake up. Repeat. Her body was at war with itself. The uppers made her heart race, her blood pressure spike, her thoughts scatter. The downers suppressed everything, slowed her breathing, made her stumble. The alcohol was the neutral zone, where up and down met in the middle for a few hours. But you need more alcohol to reach neutral when you're on more pills, and you need more pills to function when you're drinking more alcohol. Meet Me in Street Louie was filmed in 1943 and 1944. It's one of the great American musicals. Judy plays Esther Smith, a girl falling in love in turn-of-the-century Street Louie. She sings the trolley song and Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. The performance is luminous, warm, real. She seems genuinely happy. She was falling apart during the entire production. The director was Vincente Minnelli, sophisticated, European, artistic. He saw something in Judy beyond her value to the studio. Maybe he saw her. They began an affair during filming. She divorced David Rose. She married Minnelli in June 1945. She was 22. She wanted stability. She wanted someone to save her. Minnelli was gentle, patient, kind. He tried. God knows he tried. Liza Minnelli was born in March 1946. Judy was overjoyed. She was also terrified. She was also still taking pills, amphetamines and barbiturates during pregnancy. Nobody told her to stop. Maybe nobody knew. Maybe nobody cared. The culture was different then. Pills were medicine. Medicine was safe. After Liza's birth, Judy experienced what we would now recognize as severe postpartum depression. Then, they called it nerves. The solution? More pills. Different pills. Stronger pills. She tried to be a mother. She loved her daughter desperately, but she was drowning. The drugs made everything harder, made genuine feeling impossible, made her paranoid, anxious, unable to connect. The unreliability began around 1947. She would be scheduled for a morning shoot and not show up until afternoon, or not show up at all. She would arrive to set clearly intoxicated, unable to remember lines she'd known for weeks. She would have emotional breakdowns during takes, sobbing uncontrollably, unable to explain why. MGM was patient at first. She was still profitable, still valuable. They covered for her, rescheduled shoots, worked around her, gave her time off, assigned handlers to make sure she took her pills but not too many pills. It was a delicate balance. You needed her functional enough to work, but dependent enough to stay controllable. The balance became impossible to maintain. In 1948, she was cast in Annie Get Your Gun, a major production. Big budget, lots of publicity. She made it through some rehearsals, some costume fittings. Then she stopped showing up. The studio suspended her, brought her back, suspended her again. Finally replaced her with Betty Hutton. The film went on without her. She was 26 years old. She had been a star for a decade. She was already being replaced. Summer Stock was filmed in 1950. Judy was supposed to be rehabilitated, clean, ready to work. She showed up overweight, having gained pounds from the depression and inactivity. The studio put her on an even more restrictive diet, more amphetamines to kill her appetite. She lost the weight. She also lost her grip on reality. During the filming of Summer Stock, her weight fluctuated visibly from scene to scene. Some days she looked healthy. Some days she looked skeletal. The film editor had to carefully arrange shots to hide the differences. She was taking so many pills that her mood swung wildly. Cheerful one moment, sobbing the next. Paranoid, angry, incoherent. She finished Summer Stock. It was her last film for MGM. They didn't renew her contract. After 15 years, they let her go. The official statement said it was by mutual agreement. The reality was that she was uninsurable. No completion bond company would guarantee she'd finish a film. Without insurance, no studio would hire her. She was 28 years old and unemployable. The suicide attempts multiplied. She slashed her wrists in 1950, not deeply enough to die. Whether that was intentional or not, only she knew. She took sleeping pills, too many, woke up in a hospital having her stomach pumped, again and again. Some attempts were genuine desperation. Some were cries for help. Some, perhaps, were muscle memory. When everything hurts, you reach for pills. Her marriage to Minnelli ended in 1951. He couldn't save her. Nobody could save her. She could barely save herself. But she tried. In October 1951, she opened at the Palace Theatre in New York, a 2-a-day vaudeville schedule. Just her, on stage, singing. No studio, no handlers, no one to blame if it failed. It didn't fail. It was triumphant. 19 weeks of sold-out shows. Critics called it the greatest comeback in show business history. She sang Over the Rainbow, and audiences wept. She was still only 29 years old. She could still do this. The talent hadn't died. Not yet. A Star is Born came in 1954, a remake of the 1937 film. Judy played an alcoholic actress on the way down. The irony was not lost on anyone. Her performance was devastating, raw, real. She was nominated for the Academy Award. She was pregnant during the ceremony, confined to a hospital bed. Cameras were set up in her room in case she won. Grace Kelly won instead, for The Country Girl. Judy never got the Oscar. Some say the Academy didn't want to reward addiction and instability. Some say Kelly's performance was simply better. Either way, A Star is Born was Judy's last great film role. She was 32 years old. The 1,960 seconds were a long, slow descent. Concerts that were brilliant or disasters. No in between. Television appearances, Vegas shows, mounting debts, multiple marriages, more pills, more alcohol, more suicide attempts. The comeback that never quite came back. The talent still there but drowning. By 1968, Judy Garland was living in London in a borrowed apartment. She was 46 years old. She was broke, not temporarily short on cash, actually broke, in debt, unable to pay rent. The IRS had claims against her for back taxes. Her earnings from decades of stardom had somehow vanished into bad management, exploitation, and the expensive habit of staying alive while addicted to pills and alcohol. She was still performing occasionally. A club date here, a concert there. Sometimes she was brilliant. Sometimes she couldn't remember the lyrics to songs she'd sung 10,000 times. Sometimes she didn't show up at all. The unreliability that started at MGM 20 years earlier had become total. Nobody could trust her. Nobody could insure her. Nobody wanted to hire her anymore. Liza was grown now, a star in her own right, following in her mother's footsteps, which had to hurt both of them in different ways. Judy's other children, Lorna and Joey, were teenagers. She loved them. She failed them, not through lack of love, through inability to function. How do you parent when you can't parent yourself? Mickey Deans entered the picture in late 1968. He was 35, 11 years younger than Judy. He managed a Manhattan disco. He was handsome, attentive. He told her he loved her. He told her he would take care of her. She wanted so badly to believe him. She had wanted to believe all of them, all 5 husbands, all the men who promised to save her. They married in London on the 15th of March, 1969. A small ceremony at Chelsea Register Office. Judy wore a blue dress. She looked fragile in the photographs, happy but fragile, like a strong wind might blow her away. In a sense, that's exactly what happened. The marriage was troubled from the start. Money problems, her inability to work consistently, his frustration, her pills, her drinking, the same patterns that had destroyed 4 previous marriages now destroying a 5th. They fought, they reconciled, they fought again. The cycle was familiar. She had lived it for decades. The 22nd of June 1969 started like many other days in their small apartment at 4 Cadogan Lane. Judy stayed up late. She often did. The insomnia that began when she was 14 never really left. Pills helped her sleep, but not well, not peacefully. Mickey went to bed first. She stayed up, probably taking pills, probably drinking, probably both. Sometime in the early morning of June 22, Judy went to the bathroom. She locked the door. This was normal. She often spent hours in the bathroom, taking pills, trying to sleep sitting up when lying down became too uncomfortable. Her body was failing in ways that years of substance abuse guarantee. Digestive problems, breathing problems, heart problems. Mickey woke around 10:30 a.m. Judy wasn't in bed. The bathroom door was locked. He called to her. No answer. He called again. Nothing. He tried to force the door. It wouldn't budge. He climbed out a window and came around to the bathroom window. Through the window, he could see her, sitting on the toilet, slumped forward, not moving. The police arrived. A doctor arrived. The pronouncement was made official. Judy Garland was dead at 47 years old. The autopsy would later determine the cause: barbiturate poisoning, specifically secobarbital, the same sleeping pills she'd been taking since she was 14. The coroner ruled it incautious self-overdosage, not quite accidental, not quite suicide, something in between. The toxicology report showed no evidence of alcohol in her system at the time of death, just the pills that had been prescribed to her for 33 years. The pills that helped her sleep after the pills that helped her work. The pills that the studio doctors said were safe. The pills that were medicine. The pills that killed her. Her body was flown back to New York. The funeral was held at the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Chapel on Madison Avenue, the same place they'd held Rudolph Valentino's funeral, the same place they'd held Judy's mentor George Jessel's funeral. 22,000 people lined up to file past her coffin. 22,000 people who loved her, or loved the idea of her, or loved the girl singing "Over the Rainbow" in a film made 30 years before. James Mason gave the eulogy. He had co-starred with her in A Star Is Born 15 years earlier. He talked about her talent, her courage, her vulnerability. He didn't talk about the pills. He didn't talk about the addiction. Nobody did. Not then. That would have been considered tasteless, disrespectful. The truth was disrespectful. Mickey Deans would later claim, in his memoir, that Judy had been clean and sober in the weeks before her death, that she had finally beaten her addictions, that the overdose was a tragic accident, a single mistake after years of success. The toxicology reports suggest otherwise, but maybe he needed to believe it. Maybe everyone needed to believe that she'd finally found peace before the end. She was buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. Later, in 2017, her remains would be moved to Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles. Back to Hollywood, back to where it all started. Back to where they gave a 13-year-old girl amphetamines and told her it was medicine. The legacy is complicated. Judy Garland was one of the greatest performers of the 20th century. That voice, those eyes, the vulnerability she brought to every performance. She was also a cautionary tale about what the entertainment industry does to children, about what happens when profit matters more than human life, about what addiction looks like when it's prescribed by doctors and enabled by corporations. The pills they gave her at 13 killed her at 47. That's not metaphor. The barbiturates that stopped her heart in a London bathroom were the same class of drugs that MGM studio doctors had been prescribing her since 1936. 33 years of chemical dependency, started by the people who were supposed to protect her. She never had a chance, not really. From the moment she walked onto the MGM lot at 13 years old, her fate was probably sealed. The system ate her alive, slowly, over decades, with pills and exploitation and impossible standards and casual cruelty disguised as career management. What remains are the films. The Wizard of Oz, Meet Me in Street Louie, A Star is Born. The performances are still perfect, still moving, still somehow innocent despite everything we know about what was happening behind the scenes. Dorothy singing about Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Judy singing about escape, neither one of them ever finding it. The pills they gave her at 13 killed her at 47. Remember that. Remember it every time you watch one of her films. Remember what that perfect performance cost. Remember who paid the price. Errol Leslie Thompson Flynn was born in Hobart, Tasmania, on the 20th of June, 1909. His father was a distinguished marine biologist. His mother came from a respectable family. Young Errol should have become a doctor, a lawyer, a professor. Instead, he became the most dissolute movie star of his generation. The wildness was always there. You could see it in his eyes, even as a child. He was expelled from every school his parents sent him to, not for academic failure, for behavior, fighting, stealing, seducing the housemaster's daughters. By 15, he was uncontrollable. By 17, he'd run away from home. His parents probably felt relief mixed with their worry. Some children are born with something missing, some switch that tells most people when to stop. Errol never had that switch. He drifted through the South Pacific in his 20s. New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, places where a young white man with charm and no scruples could make money in the 1,920 seconds and 1,930 seconds. He worked as a gold prospector, a plantation overseer, a sailor, a recruiter of native labor, which was a polite term for something much darker. Years later, there would be stories, accusations. Had he been involved in the slave trade? Had he killed men? He never denied it. He smiled his beautiful smile and changed the subject. He arrived in Hollywood in 1935 at the age of 26. He'd done some acting in Australia, nothing serious, but he had something the camera loved. That face, those eyes, the body of an athlete, the bearing of an aristocrat, the smile of a man who'd gotten away with something. Warner Brothers signed him and immediately cast him in Captain Blood, opposite Olivia de Havilland. The film made him a star overnight. Not just a star, a phenomenon. The most beautiful man in Hollywood, the new Douglas Fairbanks. The Adventures of Robin Hood followed in 1938. Then The Seahawk. Then Dodge City. He was the biggest action star in the world. The money poured in. So did everything else. The Flynn reputation developed quickly. The elegant degenerate. The aristocrat who drank too much, gambled too much, fought too much, and bedded every woman in Hollywood who was willing, and quite a few who weren't. The studio publicists tried to manage it. They couldn't. Errol didn't want to be managed. He wanted to do exactly what he wanted, when he wanted, with whom he wanted. The fame gave him license. The money gave him access. The morphine started sometime in the late 1930 seconds. The official story was a back injury on set during a stunt sequence. That was probably true. The unofficial story was that Errol was thrilled to discover pharmaceutical opiates. He'd probably already experimented with opium in his Pacific Island days. Now he had access to clean, measured doses of morphine sulfate, and a studio doctor willing to prescribe it. Morphine was legal then, still is, for medical purposes. The problem wasn't the legality. The problem was that morphine is chemically related to heroin. The same molecule, slightly different structure, same effects on the brain, same addiction potential, same withdrawal, same ability to hollow out a human being from the inside. Errol learned to function on morphine. That was his gift and his curse. Unlike Judy Garland, who became increasingly erratic, Errol remained functional for years. He showed up to set on time, mostly. He remembered his lines, mostly. He performed his own stunts, even high on morphine, maybe especially high on morphine. Opiates remove fear, along with pain. They make dangerous things feel safe. The Los Angeles Chinatown, in the 1930 seconds and 1940 seconds, had opium dens, illegal, tolerated, hidden in plain sight. Errol knew them all. He'd go there between morphine prescriptions. The ritual of it appealed to him. The lying down on the mat, the pipe, the drifting away. He once said opium made him feel like he'd finally come home. That should have been a warning. By the early 1940 seconds, he was mixing morphine, opium, alcohol, and cocaine. The cocaine he got from the same studio doctors who provided the morphine. It was prescribed for various ailments, sinus problems, depression, fatigue. The doctors were happy to prescribe whatever kept the stars working, and Errol was still making Warner Brothers a fortune. In 1942, Errol was tried for statutory rape. 2 girls, both under 18, both at Hollywood parties at Errol's house, both plied with alcohol, both taken to bed by a man in his 30s who knew exactly how old they were. The trial was national news. Errol hired Jerry Giesler, the best criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. Giesler destroyed the girls' credibility on the witness stand, made them look like liars and opportunists. The jury acquitted Errol. The phrase, "in like Flynn," entered the language. But the trial damaged him, not morally. Errol had no moral damage to sustain. Professionally, he was still a star, but tarnished now. The heroic image was harder to maintain. The roles started to change. Darker characters, more cynical. That was fine with Errol. He was feeling darker and more cynical himself. The morphine use intensified in the 1940 seconds. He was taking enough daily to kill someone without tolerance. But tolerance is the trap. You need more to feel normal, more to feel good, more to function. Eventually, you're taking doses that would have killed you a year ago, and they barely make you feel human. Dr. Max Jacobson appeared in Hollywood in the late 1940 seconds. Dr. Feelgood, they called him. He carried a black bag full of syringes pre-filled with methamphetamine, vitamins, and sometimes morphine or heroin. He made house calls to stars. Errol became a regular client. Speed to counteract the morphine, morphine to counteract the speed. The cycle accelerated. Heroin entered the picture sometime in the late 1940 seconds. Morphine wasn't strong enough anymore. Heroin is morphine refined, more potent, faster acting, same chemical family, same effects, just more, always more. Errol could afford pharmaceutical-grade heroin, the best money could buy. It was still killing him, slowly, surely, invisibly. By 1950, at the age of 41, Errol Flynn was drinking a quart of vodka every day, plus morphine or heroin, plus cocaine, plus whatever Dr. Feelgood was injecting. His body was beginning to show the damage. The beautiful face was starting to collapse, bloated, the skin losing elasticity, the eyes yellowing, the liver was failing, the heart was damaged, the kidneys were struggling. He kept working. That was the amazing thing. He kept making movies. The quality declined. The roles became smaller. But he showed up. He hit his marks. He delivered his lines. Functional addiction at the highest level. Until it wasn't. The alcoholism compounded everything. Morphine and heroin slow you down. Alcohol does the same. Together, they created a sedation so profound that Errol sometimes seemed to be sleepwalking through his own life. But he'd learned to function in that state. He'd been practicing for 20 years. A quart of vodka daily by age 40. That's 16 shots, every single day, on top of the opiates, on top of the cocaine, on top of whatever Dr. Feelgood was injecting. His liver was processing poison constantly. The hepatocytes were dying, being replaced by scar tissue. Cirrhosis was developing. The organ was hardening, failing, unable to filter toxins from his blood. The physical deterioration became visible in the early 1,950 seconds. The beautiful face that had launched 1,000 ships was collapsing. The skin was losing elasticity from dehydration and malnutrition. Addicts don't eat properly. They forget, or the drugs suppress appetite, or they're too intoxicated to bother. Errol was eating maybe one meal a day. His body was cannibalizing itself for nutrients. His face became bloated, the alcoholic puffiness, fluid retention from kidney and liver damage. The eyes yellowed, jaundice. The liver couldn't process bilirubin anymore. The whites of his eyes turned the color of old paper. In Technicolor films, the makeup department worked overtime to hide it. In black and white, it was easier to disguise. The medical reports began to pile up in the 1,950 seconds. Hepatitis, cirrhosis, early heart disease, high blood pressure, kidney damage. His doctors told him to stop drinking, stop using drugs. He'd nod and agree, and then do exactly what he'd always done. Some addicts want to quit. Some addicts want to die. Errol seemed to be in the second category. He was hospitalized multiple times in the 1,950 seconds. Dehydration, malnutrition, infections that his compromised immune system couldn't fight. Each time, the doctors would stabilize him, pump him full of IV fluids and vitamins, lecture him about his lifestyle, send him home. He'd be back in a month. The morphine use continued despite the hospitalizations. Maybe because of them. Hospitals have morphine. Hospitals have doctors who will prescribe it for pain. And Errol had plenty of legitimate pain. The years of stunt work had destroyed his back. His joints ached. His liver hurt. Pain is subjective. Tell a doctor you're in pain, and they'll usually believe you, especially if you're Errol Flynn. John Barrymore had been Errol's friend and drinking companion in the 1,940 seconds. Barrymore died in 1942 at age 60, his body destroyed by alcohol. Errol attended the funeral. He saw what he was looking at in the mirror, saw his own future in that coffin. It didn't change anything. If anything, it gave him permission. Barrymore had lived the way he wanted. So would Errol. The friendship between Flynn and Barrymore had been a race to the bottom. Two brilliant, self-destructive men enabling each other's worst impulses. They'd drink together until dawn, share drugs, share women, laugh at the absurdity of their lives. When Barrymore died, Errol lost his partner in dissolution. He continued alone. The work became harder to find in the 1,950 seconds. Errol was unreliable now, not just occasionally, consistently. He'd miss calls, show up drunk or high, forget his lines. The studios that had once competed for him now avoided him. He wasn't bankable anymore. The insurance companies wouldn't cover him. Without insurance, there was no film. He made low-budget films in Europe, adventure films, costume dramas. The roles that had once made him a star now felt like self-parody. He was older, heavier, slower. The swashbuckling hero was a middle-aged alcoholic struggling to get through a sword fight without collapsing. Beverly Ardland entered his life in 1957. She was 15 years old. Errol was 48. She was an aspiring actress. He was a fading star with a taste for very young women. Her mother encouraged the relationship, saw it as an opportunity for her daughter. The three of them traveled together, Errol, Beverly, and her mother. The arrangement was grotesque. Nobody seemed to care. Beverly later claimed she loved him. Maybe she did. Maybe at 15, she didn't understand what love was supposed to look like. Errol was charming when he wanted to be, generous, attentive. He was also an addict who was slowly committing suicide with drugs and alcohol. That's not love. That's spectating at someone's death. The relationship lasted 2 years. 2 years of Errol getting sicker. The hepatitis worsened. The cirrhosis progressed. His heart was damaged from decades of stimulant abuse. Cocaine and methamphetamine had pushed it too hard for too long. The muscle was enlarged, stiff, unable to pump efficiently. By 1959, Errol was 50 years old. He looked 75. The autopsy would later confirm that his body was equivalent to a man 25 years older. Every organ was damaged. The liver was cirrhotic. The heart was enlarged. The kidneys were failing. The lungs showed damage from smoking and respiratory depression from opiates. The 14th of October, 1959, Vancouver, British Columbia. Errol was there to sell his yacht. He needed money. He always needed money. Fame and fortune had come and gone. The drugs and alcohol and lifestyle had consumed everything. He was staying with a friend. Beverly was with him. That afternoon, he complained of pain in his legs. Back pain. He'd been complaining about pain for years. Chronic pain. Real pain. Pain that morphine used to help with but didn't anymore. Tolerance had stolen even that comfort. He lay down, told Beverly he needed to rest. Around 5:30 p.m., Beverly checked on him. He wasn't breathing. She called for help. A doctor arrived. Too late. Errol Flynn was dead. The official cause was myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Massive, sudden, inevitable. The autopsy told the real story. The heart of a 75-year-old man in the body of a 50-year-old. Coronary artery disease, cirrhosis, kidney damage, hepatitis. The cumulative effect of 25 years of sustained substance abuse. The morphine hadn't killed him directly. The heroin hadn't stopped his heart. But they'd weakened everything so thoroughly that when the heart finally gave out, there was nothing left to compensate. His last words, according to some accounts, were, "I've had a hell of a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed every minute of it." Maybe he did say that. Maybe it was invented later. Either way, it captured something essential about Errol Flynn. He'd lived exactly as he wanted. He'd destroyed himself doing it, and he'd done it with style. Barbara Lee Redfield was born the 16th of November, 1927, in Cloquet, Minnesota. Small town, working class family. She was beautiful from birth. The kind of beauty that draws attention, the kind that seems like a ticket out. By 15, she was a local beauty queen. By 18, She was married to an Air Force pilot. By 20, she was divorced and heading to Hollywood. She arrived in 1948, 21 years old, blonde, curvy, the face of an angel and the figure of a pin-up girl. The comparisons to Lana Turner started immediately. Same look, same appeal, same potential. Universal Pictures signed her. Small roles at first, but the camera loved her. She photographed like a dream. Her rise was rapid. 1,949. Bigger roles. 1,950. Starring roles. She appeared opposite James Cagney in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, opposite Gary Cooper in Dallas. These weren't small independent films. These were major studio productions with major stars. She was being groomed for A-list stardom. At 23, her future looked unlimited. Then came the love triangle, Francho Tone and Tom Neal, both actors, both in love with Barbara, or obsessed with her, or possessive of her. The line between love and possession was blurry in 1,950 seconds Hollywood. Maybe it still is. Tone was the respectable choice, distinguished, successful, former husband of Joan Crawford. From a wealthy family, he could give Barbara security, stability, a career boost. Tom Neal was the dangerous choice. Handsome, volatile, broke. The kind of man who made you feel alive and scared at the same time. Barbara chose both. She couldn't decide, or wouldn't. She was engaged to Tone. She was sleeping with Neal. She was 23 years old and didn't understand that you can't keep two men on strings forever. Eventually, the strings break. The 14th of September, 1951. Sunset Boulevard. Outside Barbara's apartment. Tone arrived to see Barbara. Neal was already there. Words were exchanged. Then fists. Neal beat Tone nearly to death. Fractured skull. Broken nose. Concussion. Tone spent weeks in the hospital. Neal was arrested for assault. The press coverage was massive. Scandalous. Two men fighting over a woman. Blood on Sunset Boulevard. Barbara's name in every newspaper in America. Not for her talent. For being the prize two men were willing to destroy each other over. The studios noticed the wrong kind of attention. The kind that makes you uninsurable. Barbara married Tone in September 1951, while he was still recovering. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of obligation, maybe because she thought it would help her career. It didn't. The marriage lasted 7 weeks. Tone divorced her. Her career was effectively over. At 24. The slide from A-list to B-movies took 18 months. From starring opposite Gary Cooper to cheap westerns and crime films. From major studios to independent producers. From above, the title billing to supporting roles. The fall was breathtaking in its speed. The alcohol started during the fall. Social drinking became daily drinking. Daily drinking became necessary drinking. The kind where you need a drink to face the day, to go to auditions, to deal with the reality that you're 25 years old and your career is finished. Prescription pills followed. Pain pills, nerve pills, diet pills. The same cocktail that was destroying Judy Garland was now available to Barbara. Hollywood doctors were generous with prescriptions, especially to beautiful women. Especially to beautiful women who were struggling. The pain medication became a daily necessity by 1953, not because of physical pain, because of psychic pain, the humiliation of the fall, the loss of everything she'd worked for, the realization that beauty wasn't enough, that talent wasn't enough, that one scandal could destroy everything. She was still making movies in 1954 and 1955. Bad movies. The kind that played in second-run theaters. The kind where you got paid in cash at the end of the shoot because the producer might not be around next week. She needed the money. She needed the work. She needed to feel like she was still somebody. The prostitution began around 1955. High-end at first. Call girls, exclusive clients, men who would pay $1,000 to sleep with a former movie star. It wasn't that different from the casting couch, really. Sex for money, sex for opportunity, just more honest about the transaction. The descent accelerated. High-end escorts became mid-level prostitution. Mid-level became street level. By 1956, Barbara Payton was working Sunset Boulevard, literally, standing on street corners, getting into cars with strangers, $20, $50, whatever she could get. The alcohol and pills made it bearable. You can do anything if you're drunk enough, if you're high enough, if you're numb enough. She was all three. She needed to be. The alternative was facing what she'd become, from screen goddess to streetwalker in 5 years. She was arrested multiple times. Prostitution, public intoxication, possession of prescription drugs without a prescription. Each arrest was reported in the papers. Each one another nail in the coffin of her dignity. The tabloids loved it. The fall of Barbara Payton was a morality tale, a warning. This is what happens when women misbehave. The heroin came later, exact date unknown, sometime in the late 1950 seconds, maybe 1957, maybe 1958. Prescription pills weren't enough anymore. Alcohol wasn't enough. She needed something stronger, something that made everything disappear completely. Heroin did that. Heroin made her forget who she used to be. By 1960, she was living in cheap hotels, Skid Row, the kind of places where you paid by the week and nobody asked questions. She was turning tricks to pay for drugs, turning tricks to pay for the hotel, turning tricks because it was the only thing she knew how to do anymore. Former co-stars would pass her on the street. Sometimes they recognized her, sometimes they didn't, sometimes they pretended not to. What do you say to someone who fell that far? What comfort can you offer? Most people crossed the street, looked away, let her disappear into the crowd. She was 33 years old. She looked 50. Heroin ages you. Malnutrition ages you. Prostitution ages you. The cumulative effect was devastating. The beautiful face from the magazine covers was gone, replaced by a haggard, worn mask. The 1960 seconds were a fog, not the pleasant, dreamy kind, the desperate, confused kind, the kind where days blur together and you're not sure if you slept or just passed out. Barbara was living in a different hotel every few weeks, getting evicted, moving on. Downtown Los Angeles, Skid Row, the place where people went to disappear. The hotels were all the same. Narrow hallways, thin walls, stained carpets, shared bathrooms, the smell of desperation and cheap disinfectant, rooms the size of closets, a bed, a chair if you were lucky, a window looking out at another building or an alley, $20 a week, $40 if it had a private bathroom. She was arrested repeatedly through the early 1960 seconds. Prostitution charges. The police knew her. Everyone knew her. Former movie star. Now this. The booking officers would recognize her name, look up from the paperwork, try to reconcile the woman in front of them with the images from the movie posters. The disconnect was profound. The heroin addiction was complete now. Not recreational, not occasional, full dependence. She needed it to function, needed it to not be sick. Heroin withdrawal is agony, muscle cramps, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, cold sweats, insomnia, anxiety, so severe it feels like dying. She'd do anything to avoid that, anything. Most of her money went to drugs. What was left went to rent and food, in that order. She was skeletal thin. Heroin suppresses appetite. So does poverty. So does despair. She probably weighed 90 pounds, maybe less. Her teeth were going bad. Addiction destroys dental health. No money for dentists. No insurance. Just pain and decay. The prostitution continued. It had to. It was her only income. Street-level sex work. Getting into cars. 20-minute transactions in alleys or cheap motel rooms. The men who picked her up weren't looking for glamour. They were looking for the cheapest option available. That was Barbara now. The cheapest option. Some of the men recognized her, or thought they did. Are you Barbara Payton? She'd usually deny it. Sometimes she'd admit it. Depends on whether she thought it would get her more money. Former fame as a sales pitch. You can sleep with a movie star for $50. The irony was devastating. In 1963, she did something unexpected. She wrote a memoir, I Am Not Ashamed, published by Holloway House, a company known for sleaze paperbacks. The book was brutal, honest, unflinching. She detailed the fall, the prostitution, the drugs, the humiliation, everything. The critics called it exploitative, trashy. They weren't wrong. But it was also honest in a way Hollywood memoirs never were. Most stars write sanitized versions of their lives. Barbara wrote the truth, or as close to truth as memory and heroin allowed. She wrote about trading sex for drugs, about the degradation, about what it felt like to be 23 and on top of the world, then 35 and living in a flophouse. The book earned her some money, a few $1,000s. She used it to keep living, to keep using. Money was just a means to heroin. Everything was just a means to heroin. That's what addiction does. Reduces everything to a single equation. Get the drug, use the drug, get more of the drug. She was living on Skid Row proper now. 5th Street, 6th Street, the blocks where the homeless congregated, where the missions were, where men slept in doorways and women sold themselves for $5. Barbara fit right in. Just another ghost in a neighborhood of ghosts. Former co-stars occasionally passed through downtown, on their way to meetings, to restaurants, to theaters, sometimes in limousines. Sometimes they'd see her, or someone who might be her, standing on a corner, looking hollowed out, looking decades older than she should. Most people didn't recognize her. The ones who did looked away quickly. There are stories, unverified but probably true, about actors who recognized Barbara and slipped her money. $20, $50. Not enough to change anything, enough to buy a fix, enough to postpone withdrawal for a day. These weren't acts of charity. They were acts of horror, there but for the grace of God and better choices. The health problems were mounting by the mid-1000. 960 seconds. Hepatitis from shared needles. Liver damage from alcohol and drugs. Malnutrition. Infections. STDs from unprotected sex work. She was in and out of emergency rooms. They'd stabilize her, lecture her, send her back to the streets. What else could they do? She tried to quit several times. The heroin, the prostitution, the life. Checked into free clinics. Tried to detox. The physical withdrawal she could handle. 3 days of hell, then it's over. But the psychological dependence was harder. The void that heroin had been filling was still there. Bigger now, deeper. Nothing else could fill it. By 1967, Barbara was 39 years old. She looked 60. Heroin and hard living had consumed her. The beautiful face was gone. The body that had made her famous was skeletal and damaged. She was coughing constantly. Smoking and heroin had destroyed her lungs. Her liver was failing. Her heart was damaged. The 8th of May, 1967. A bungalow in San Diego. Not Skid Row. Slightly better. Someone was letting her stay there. A friend. An ex-lover. someone who still remembered who she used to be. She was alone when it happened. Probably for the best. The cause of death was listed as heart and liver failure, the cumulative effect of years of alcohol and drug abuse, the heroin, the pills, the malnutrition, the infections, the stress of prostitution, the complete and total destruction of a human body through sustained neglect and abuse. She was 39 years old. She'd been famous for maybe 3 years. She'd been falling for 17. The math was brutal. The fall had lasted 6 times longer than the fame. The destruction had been so much more thorough than the creation. From screen goddess to Skid Row in 15 years. From starring opposite Gary Cooper to selling herself for $20 in 10 years. From beauty queen to corpse in a borrowed bungalow at 39. The trajectory was almost mathematically perfect in its descent. Nobody claimed her body immediately. She had family somewhere. They eventually arranged burial. A small service. Few attendees. Most of the people who'd known her were dead, had moved on, or wanted to forget. Barbara Payton became a cautionary tale, a footnote, a sad story people told to illustrate the dangers of Hollywood. The films remain. They're not good films, mostly, but they preserve her at 23, beautiful, radiant, full of potential. The woman in those films has no idea what's coming. She thinks she's going to be a star. She thinks beauty and talent are enough. She has no idea that in 15 years, she'll die alone in San Diego, her body destroyed by drugs and desperation. Maybe that's a mercy. Not knowing, living in the moment when everything still seems possible. Robert Charles Derman Mitchum was born the 6th of August, 1917, in Bridgeport, Connecticut. His father died in a railroad accident when Robert was 2. His mother struggled. The family was poor, Depression-era poor. The kind where you ate what you could find and wore clothes until they fell apart. Robert was on the streets young, working odd jobs, learning to fight, learning to survive. By 14, he was riding freight trains across America, a hobo, a drifter, seeing the country from boxcars and rail yards, sleeping in hobo jungles, eating in soup kitchens when he could, going hungry when he couldn't. He saw things, the underbelly of American life during the Depression, violence, desperation, people doing whatever it took to survive. He ended up in California in his late teens. More odd jobs, construction, dock work, anything that paid. He drifted into acting almost by accident. Extra work, background, $5 a day. It was easier than digging ditches. He was good at it. Not trained, just naturally good. The camera liked his face, lived in, weary, real. His break came in 1945 with The Story of G.I. Joe. He played a tired, cynical soldier. It wasn't much of a stretch. He was 27 years old and had already lived 3 lifetimes. The performance earned him an Oscar nomination. Suddenly, he was in demand. Leading roles, good money, a contract with RKO Pictures. By 1948, he was a star. Film noir mostly, playing tough guys, criminals, men with questionable morals. He was perfect for it. That face, those heavy-lidded eyes, the voice that sounded like gravel and cigarettes. He was just being himself on camera. The 31st of August, 1948. A house in Laurel Canyon. A party. Marijuana. Lots of it. The police raided. Mitchum was arrested, along with actress Leela Leeds and 2 others. Possession of marijuana. Front page news. A major star caught with drugs. In 1948, this was scandalous. The trial was quick. Mitchum pleaded guilty. The judge sentenced him to 60 days in county jail. He served his time at a prison farm, watering lawns, picking fruit, being a celebrity prisoner. The other inmates treated him well. He was famous. That bought respect, even in jail. The arrest should have ended his career. That was the assumption. Drugs, Jail time, scandal, RKO considered dropping him. The morality clauses in studio contracts were strict, but something unexpected happened. The public loved him more. The bad boy image solidified. Dangerous, rebellious, cool. His films made more money after the arrest than before. Mitchum learned something important. The rules didn't apply to him the same way they applied to other people. He could get away with things. He could be honest about his flaws, and people would love him for it. That's a dangerous lesson for anyone to learn, especially an addict, because marijuana was just the beginning. Mitchum had been smoking pot since his hobo days. It was common in certain circles: jazz musicians, drifters, outsiders. Nothing dramatic, nothing that interfered with function. But marijuana led to other experiments. LSD appeared in Hollywood in the early 1950 seconds, still legal, still being researched by psychiatrists as a potential therapeutic tool. The stars experimented. Cary Grant was doing LSD therapy with a Beverly Hills psychiatrist. Others followed. Mitchum tried it, multiple times. He later claimed it opened his mind, showed him things about consciousness. Maybe it did, or maybe he just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. The alcohol was constant. Functional alcoholism. He drank every day. Vodka, whiskey, beer, whatever was available. Not falling down drunk, not slurring his words, just maintaining a constant blood alcohol level that would have put most people in the hospital. His tolerance was extraordinary. He'd show up to set drunk. Everyone knew. The directors knew. The producers knew. The other actors knew. Nobody said anything because he could still perform. He'd hit his marks, remember his lines, deliver the performance. Sometimes he'd do it better drunk than other actors could do it sober. That was his gift and his curse. Function. Complete function despite constant intoxication. He could drink a fifth of whiskey and you wouldn't know unless you knew what to look for. The slightly slower movements, the microscopic delay in response. But he could act, he could work, he could be professional while completely loaded. His philosophy was simple. I never took the work seriously, just the doing of it. He didn't care about being a star, didn't care about fame, didn't care about awards or recognition. He cared about doing the job well. The drinking didn't interfere with the job. Therefore, the drinking wasn't a problem. This is the logic of every functional addict. As long as you can still perform, it's not a problem. As long as you can still work, it's under control. As long as nobody complains, keep going. Mitchum kept going for 40 years. The marijuana arrests continued occasionally. Small possessions, nothing major. He'd pay a fine, move on. The public expected it from him now. Robert Mitchum and drugs, part of his brand, part of his appeal. The rebel who didn't care what society thought. He experimented with other substances over the years. Cocaine, hashish, peyote, whatever was around, whatever people offered. He approached drugs with the same weary acceptance he approached everything else. Try it, see what happens. If it's interesting, maybe do it again. If not, move on. But the alcohol remained constant, every single day, morning to night, maintaining, functioning, working. He made some of the best films of the 1950 seconds and 1960 seconds. Night of the Hunter, Cape Fear, El Dorado, all while drunk, all while high, all while being exactly who he'd always been. His body should have failed. The drinking alone should have killed him. The drugs on top of the drinking should have destroyed his liver, his brain, his heart. But he kept going. Genetics, maybe. Tolerance. The constitution of someone who'd survived the depression by sheer toughness. He worked until the end. His last film was in 1995. He was 78 years old, still drinking, still smoking, still being Robert Mitchum. He died in July 1997 of lung cancer and emphysema. The alcohol didn't kill him. The drugs didn't kill him. The cigarettes got him in the end. He survived to 79, outlived Errol Flynn by 30 years, outlived Judy Garland by 28 years, outlived Barbara Payton by 40. The difference? He controlled it. Or he thought he controlled it. Or maybe he just got lucky. Either way, he proved that functional addiction was possible. For some people. Sometimes, if you were tough enough, lucky enough, genetically blessed enough. But he was the exception. Most addicts aren't Robert Mitchum. Most can't drink a fifth daily for 40 years and still show up for work. Most fall apart. Most die young. Mitchum beat the odds. That doesn't mean the odds weren't real. Byron Ellsworth Barr was born the 4th of November 1913 in Street Cloud, Minnesota. Another Midwesterner headed for Hollywood. Another small-town boy with big dreams. He arrived in Los Angeles in the 1930 seconds and immediately hit a problem. There was already an actor named Byron Barr working in films. SAG rules required unique names. He needed to change it. He took the name from a character he'd played. Gig Young. It stuck. From that moment on, Byron Barr ceased to exist. He became Gig Young, charming, debonair, the best friend in every movie, the comic relief, the guy who gets the girl in the subplot while the lead gets the girl in the main plot. Not glamorous work, but steady. He had a good career, supporting roles through the 1,940 seconds and 1,950 seconds. The friend, the colleague, the rival, always professional, always dependable, always good for a laugh or a knowing comment. He was perfect for the role, handsome enough to be believable as competition, not handsome enough to overshadow the lead. The drinking started early, through 1,940 seconds probably. Social drinking that became daily drinking. But Gig hid it well. This was Hollywood. Everyone drank. The question wasn't whether you drank. The question was whether you could hold it together. Gig could hold it together. For decades. He was married 4 times before the end. Each marriage had the same pattern. Courtship, hope, marriage, slow deterioration, drinking, arguments, divorce. He tried. He always tried. He wanted to be the man he played in the movies. Charming, stable, reliable. But the drinking wouldn't let him. The first 3 wives blamed him. He blamed himself. Probably they were all right. Alcoholism destroys marriages. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. Doesn't matter who loves whom. The alcohol becomes the third party. The invisible presence in every room, every conversation, every moment of intimacy, corrupted by wondering if he's been drinking. The studios knew. They always knew. But he functioned, showed up on time, knew his lines, delivered the performance. Functional alcoholism, the Hollywood specialty. As long as you can work, you can drink. That was the implicit deal. The studios enabled it, covered for it, provided it when necessary. The DUI arrests were covered up, multiple times. The fix was simple. Studio calls police chief. Police chief makes it go away. The arrest record disappears. The star goes to rehab if necessary, or just gets a stern talking to. Then back to work. The machine protected its assets. Gig Young was an asset. Therefore, Gig Young was protected. But the protection couldn't fix what was broken inside him. The alcoholism was a symptom. Depression maybe. Self-hatred probably. The sense that he wasn't good enough. Wasn't talented enough. Wasn't the star. Would never be the star. Just the supporting player. Always the the supporting player. In 1969, everything changed. They shoot horses, don't they? A dark film about a Depression-era dance marathon. Gig played Rocky, the sleazy MC who exploits desperate contestants. It was against type, darker, meaner, more complex than anything he'd done before. He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, March 1970, the Oscar, the recognition he'd been chasing for 30 years. He gave a gracious speech, thanked everyone, smiled for the cameras, held the statue. It should have been the happiest moment of his life. It wasn't. The Oscar didn't fix anything, didn't make him feel better, didn't make the drinking stop. If anything, it made things worse. Now he had to live up to it. Now expectations were higher. Now failure would be more visible. The pressure increased. So did the drinking. Prescription pills entered the picture in the 1,970 seconds. Valium, Librium, benzodiazepines, anti-anxiety medication, legitimate prescriptions from legitimate doctors. Take one when you feel anxious. Take two if one isn't enough. Take three when two stops working. Tolerance builds fast with benzos. Seconal and other barbiturates followed. Sleeping pills. Alcohol disrupts sleep. You pass out, but you don't sleep properly. Don't dream. Don't reach deep sleep. Wake up exhausted. The solution? Sleeping pills, which also don't provide real sleep, just unconsciousness. But unconsciousness is better than lying awake all night. The combination of alcohol and pills is deadly. Both are central nervous system depressants. Both slow breathing, slow heart rate. Together, they can stop both completely. Gig knew this. Every addict knows this. He kept mixing them anyway. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he was already halfway gone. Kim Schmidt was 31 years old when she met Gig Young in 1978. He was 64. She was a fan. She loved his movies. She loved the charming man she saw on screen. She didn't know the man behind the screen. The drunk, the pill addict, the depressive, who'd been falling apart for 40 years. They married the 27th of September, 1978, 21 days before he killed her. 3 weeks of marriage. What happened in those 3 weeks? Arguments, probably. The reality setting in. The realization that she'd married an elderly addict, not a movie star. His realization that marriage wouldn't fix him, that nothing would fix him, that he was broken beyond repair. The 19th of October, 1978, their apartment in the Osborne building on West 57th Street in Manhattan. What happened that day? Nobody knows exactly. No witnesses, no note, just the aftermath. The police found them in the evening. Gig and Kim, both dead, both shot. Kim shot once in the head. Gig shot once in the head. His gun, the gun he'd purchased recently. The gun he'd been carrying around. The gun he'd been talking about to friends. I might do something crazy. The apartment was chaos. Empty bottles, pill bottles, signs of a struggle, or just the normal mess of two addicts living together. The investigation concluded murder-suicide. Gig shot Kim, then shot himself. The evidence supported it. The angle of the wounds, the gun in his hand, the timeline. Nobody saw it coming. That's what everyone said, but that's not true. His friends knew he was drinking heavily, knew about the pills, knew he was depressed, knew the marriage was troubled. They knew. They just didn't think it would end like this. Murder, suicide, blood in a Manhattan apartment. The autopsy revealed high levels of alcohol, high levels of barbiturates, high levels of benzodiazepines. He was intoxicated on multiple substances when he pulled the trigger. Was it psychosis? Withdrawal? Just the culmination of 40 years of chemical abuse finally producing complete mental breakdown? The funeral was quiet. Family. A few friends. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him anymore. He'd been a supporting player, then an Oscar winner, then a murderer. The narrative didn't work. There was no redemption arc, no tragic but beautiful ending, just ugly violence and death. The Oscar sits somewhere, maybe with family, maybe in storage, the symbol of achievement, the thing he thought would make him happy. It didn't, it couldn't, because the problem wasn't lack of recognition. The problem was chemical dependency and mental illness. The Oscar couldn't fix that. Nothing could fix that. Gig Young, Byron Barr, the charming supporting actor, the hidden alcoholic, the prescription pill addict, the murderer, the suicide, all the same person, all the same broken man who spent 40 years trying to drink and drug himself into someone else, someone happier, someone whole. It didn't work. It never works. And on the 19th of October, 1978, it ended in the worst way possible. Constance Frances Marie Ockelman was born the 14th of November, 1922, in Brooklyn, New York. She was beautiful from the start, not conventionally pretty, something more interesting. High cheekbones, wide eyes, small features that photographed like a dream. By the time she was a teenager, people were stopping her on the street. She arrived in Hollywood in her late teens, changed her name to Veronica Lake. The studio chose it, something mysterious, something memorable. She got small roles immediately, background work, bit parts. The camera operators noticed her, that face, the way light hit it. She was made for black and white film. Her break came in 1941 with I Wanted Wings, a small role, but she had a new hairstyle. Long blonde hair falling over one eye, the peekaboo look. It became instantly iconic. Every woman in America wanted to copy it. Every magazine featured it. Veronica Lake's hair was as famous as her face. Sullivan's Travels came the same year, Preston Sturges directing. She played a down-on-her-luck actress opposite Joel McCrea. The performance was perfect, funny, sad, real. Then This Gun for Hire with Alan Ladd in 1942. Film noir. She was the femme fatale, cool, dangerous, untouchable. Her career peaked at 20 years old. The peekaboo hairstyle defined 1,940 seconds glamour. But there was a problem. World War II. Women were working in factories, operating machinery. The long hair falling over one eye was dangerous around equipment. Women were getting scalped, caught in gears. The government asked Hollywood to help, asked Veronica Lake to cut her hair for the war effort. She did it, patriotic duty, cut the signature hair short, appeared in newsreels encouraging women to tie their hair back for factory safety. It was the right thing to do. It destroyed her career. The peekaboo hair wasn't just style, it was her brand, her identity. Without it, she was just another pretty blonde actress. Hollywood had hundreds of those. The roles dried up after 1943. Not immediately, but steadily. Fewer offers, smaller parts, B movies instead of A pictures. She was 22 years old and her career was already declining. The drinking started then, or maybe it had always been there and now it got worse. Hard to say. Alcoholics rarely remember when social drinking became necessary drinking. She was married multiple times. The first marriage ended in 1943, the second in 1952, the third in 1959. Each one the same pattern: hope, love, slow deterioration, arguments about drinking, attempts to control it, failure, divorce. She had children. She loved them. She failed them. Alcoholism makes good parenting impossible. The drinking was constant by the late 1,940 seconds. Onset, offset, morning, night, vodka mostly. The alcoholic's drink of choice because it doesn't smell as much, doesn't leave obvious traces on the breath, harder to detect. You can hide it longer, until you can't hide it anymore. Directors stopped hiring her, not because she couldn't act, because she couldn't be trusted. Show up late, show up drunk, not show up at all. The pattern that destroyed Judy Garland's career was destroying Veronica's. The studios had less patience for alcoholism in supporting actresses than in major stars. Less money invested, easier to replace. By 1952, she wasn't getting film offers anymore. Television work occasionally, theater work, summer stock, dinner theater, the long slide down from A-list Hollywood to regional theater productions. She was 30 years old. The Peekaboo girl was gone, replaced by a woman with short hair and a drinking problem nobody wanted to deal with. The 1,950 seconds were a blur. Bad marriages, worse jobs, constant drinking. She was arrested for public intoxication multiple times. New York, Miami, Los Angeles. The papers reported it. Former star arrested drunk. Another morality tale. Another warning about the dangers of Hollywood fame. In 1962, someone found her working as a barmaid in Manhattan. The story made national news. The shock, the humiliation, how far she'd fallen. From screen goddess to bartender. The metaphor was too perfect. The alcoholic serving alcohol. She claimed she wasn't ashamed. Claimed honest work was honest work. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she was too drunk to care. Maybe the alternative was admitting total failure and she wasn't ready for that yet. Pride is often the last thing alcoholics lose. Sometimes it's the only thing they have left. The hepatitis diagnosis came in the late 1,960 seconds. Liver damage from decades of heavy drinking. Hepatitis progresses to cirrhosis. Cirrhosis progresses to liver failure. Liver failure progresses to death. The timeline is predictable. The drinking didn't stop. It never stops until death stops it. She was living in Vermont by the early 1,970 seconds. Small apartment, alone, still drinking. The hepatitis had progressed to cirrhosis. Her skin was yellow, jaundice. The liver couldn't filter bilirubin anymore. Her abdomen was distended, ascites, fluid accumulation from portal hypertension. Her body was failing system by system. The 7th of July, 1973, Burlington, Vermont. A hospital room. Veronica Lake died alone. The cause was hepatitis and acute renal failure. The kidneys failed after the liver failed. The cascade of organ failure that alcohol guarantees if you drink long enough. She was 50 years old. She looked 70. The burial was in a small cemetery. No headstone initially. No money for one. She died broke. Decades of earnings gone to alcohol and bad decisions and the expensive business of slow suicide. Years later, fans raised money for a proper headstone, a small marker, Veronica Lake, 1,922 to 1,973. The dates don't tell the story. The peekaboo hair, the film noir goddess, the face that defined 1,940 seconds glamour, gone, replaced by a cautionary tale about alcoholism and the price of fame. The films remain. Sullivan's Travels, This Gun for Hire, The Glass Key. She's still young in those films, still beautiful, still has the hair, still has everything. The woman who died alone in Vermont had none of those things. Not the hair, not the beauty, not the career, not the life, just the alcoholism. Just the slow, grinding destruction of everything she'd been. Hepatitis, cirrhosis, renal failure, death. The progression is clinical, mathematical, inevitable. They buried her in an unmarked grave. Former star, anonymous corpse. The Peekaboo girl disappeared completely, until the fans remembered, until they raised money for a stone, until her name was carved into granite. A small victory against oblivion. A small monument to a large waste. 50 years old, dead from alcohol. Another Hollywood casualty, another name on the list, another warning nobody heeds. William Franklin Beadle Jr. was born the 17th of April, 1918, in O'Fallon, Illinois. All-American boy, good family, normal childhood. Nothing suggested he'd end up bleeding to death alone on his apartment floor 63 years later. But that's how it ended. The beginning suggested something completely different. He arrived in Hollywood in the late 930 seconds. Changed his name to William Holden. The studio chose it. Something strong, masculine, reliable. He got the lead in Golden Boy in 1939, 21 years old, playing a violinist who becomes a boxer. The film was a hit. William Holden was a star. The career trajectory was perfect. Leading man, action films, romances, war films. He had the face for it. Handsome but not pretty. Strong jaw, good hair. The kind of man women wanted and men wanted to be. Hollywood loved him. America loved him. He was bankable. World War II interrupted things. He served in the Army Air Forces. Nothing dramatic. No combat. Training films mostly. Using his acting skills for the war effort. He came back in 1945 and resumed his career. The roles kept coming. The money kept coming. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Sunset Boulevard came in 1950. Billy Wilder directing. Holden played Joe Gillis, a down-on-his-luck screenwriter who becomes the kept man of a faded silent film star. The role was perfect. The cynicism, the desperation, the sense of a man selling himself. Holden understood it completely, maybe too completely. The film opens with Joe Gillis dead in a swimming pool, narrating his own death. Poor dumb bastard, he says about himself. Always trying to get a piece of cheese out of a trap. The metaphor was obvious. Hollywood as trap, success as cheese. The question was whether you'd recognize the trap before it killed you. The functional alcoholism began in the early 1950 seconds. Social drinking that became daily drinking. Martinis at lunch, scotch in the evening, wine with dinner, more scotch after dinner. The pattern of every successful alcoholic, maintaining, functioning. Nobody notices until they can't maintain anymore. Audrey Hepburn happened in 1954. Sabrina. Holden was 36. Audrey was 24. She was luminous, innocent, everything he wasn't. They fell in love. Or he fell in love. Or they both fell in love. But it didn't matter, because he couldn't give her what she wanted. She wanted children. He'd had a vasectomy years earlier. Marriage problems. Decision made. Irreversible. He didn't tell her until she was in love with him, until she'd imagined a future. Then he told her, no children. Not possible. She left him. Married Mel Ferrer. Holden kept drinking. The drinking intensified through the 1960 seconds. The bridge on the River Kwai won him international acclaim, an Oscar nomination, more money, more fame. None of it stopped the drinking. If anything, success made it worse. More pressure, more expectations, more reasons to drink. He was still functional, still working, still delivering good performances, but the grip was loosening, showing up late sometimes, needing multiple takes. The drinking was starting to show on his face. The bloating, the broken capillaries, the yellowing eyes. Makeup could hide some of it, not all of it. His marriage fell apart in the late 1960 seconds. 20-some years. Children. The whole American dream, destroyed by alcoholism. His wife had tried to control it, tried to help him, tried everything. Nothing worked. You can't fix an alcoholic who doesn't want to be fixed. Holden didn't want to be fixed. He moved into an apartment in Santa Monica. The Shorecliff Towers. Ocean view. Expensive. Lonely. He lived alone. Drank alone. Aged alone. The roles became fewer. Not because he couldn't act. Because he was unreliable. Because the insurance companies wouldn't cover him. Because he looked old and sick, even when the makeup department did their best. By the late 1972, William Holden was drinking constantly, not binge drinking, steady drinking, maintaining a constant blood alcohol level, vodka mostly, a bottle a day, sometimes more. His body was failing. Liver damage, heart damage, brain damage. The years of alcohol were catching up. He was 63 years old in 1981, still living in the Santa Monica apartment, still alone, still drinking. His last film had been released, his last role performed. He was essentially retired, waiting for death in an expensive apartment with an ocean view and a bottle of vodka. The 16th of November, 1981, Monday afternoon. Holden was alone in his apartment, drinking. He'd been drinking all day. He stood up, maybe going to the bathroom, maybe going to the kitchen, maybe just standing up. His balance was off. Alcohol affects balance, affects coordination, affects judgment. He fell, hit his head on the corner of a bedside table, the sharp corner, the kind of impact that would hurt a sober person, the kind that can kill a drunk person. His blood was thin from alcohol and liver damage. Blood doesn't clot properly when the liver is failing. The cut bled a lot. He was probably conscious at first, probably felt the blood, probably tried to stop it, but he was drunk, coordination gone, judgment gone. Maybe he thought he could sleep it off. Maybe he passed out. Maybe he just gave up. The blood kept flowing. He bled to death over several days, not hours, days, lying on the floor of his bedroom, bleeding from a cut on his head, too drunk to call for help, too injured to get up, too alone for anyone to notice. The alcohol had thinned his blood so much that a minor injury became fatal. The body was discovered on November 20. 4 days later, a building manager entered the apartment. Holden had missed some appointments. Nobody had seen him. The smell was probably noticeable from the hallway. Death has a smell. 4 days of death in a closed apartment. The scene was grim. Holden's body on the bedroom floor. Blood everywhere. A mostly empty vodka bottle nearby. Cigarettes. The detritus of a life, lived alone, with only alcohol for company. The coroner ruled it accidental death. Exsanguination. Bled out. The alcohol was a contributing factor. The loneliness was implied. The funeral was private. Family only. No Hollywood spectacle. No celebration of a life well lived. Just grief and waste, and the quiet acknowledgement that everyone had seen this coming. Maybe not the specific method, but the general trajectory. Alcoholic drinks himself to death. The details vary. The ending doesn't. William Holden, the golden boy, the all-American leading man, dead on his apartment floor, alone, drunk, bleeding from a head wound he was too intoxicated to treat. 4 days before anyone noticed. That's the ending. That's what 50 years of alcoholism produces. The films remain. Sunset Boulevard, Bridge on the River Kwai, Network, Sabrina. He's young in those films. Handsome, vital, alive. The man who died alone on the floor isn't in those films. That man is separate, divided. The actor preserved forever. The human destroyed completely. The vodka bottle and the cigarettes. That's what they found next to him. The essentials. The things he needed more than help. More than life. The things that killed him in the end. The studio system operated from roughly 1,920 to 1,000. 960. 40 years of total control. The major studios were MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, RKO, 20th Century Fox, Universal, Columbia, and United Artists. They didn't just make films. They owned the actors who appeared in them, owned them legally through contracts, owned them practically through control of every aspect of their lives. The 7-year contract was standard. An actor would sign at 18 or 20. The studio gained exclusive rights to their services. The actor couldn't work for anyone else, couldn't choose their roles, couldn't refuse assignments without being suspended without pay. The studio could loan them to other studios like equipment, could terminate the contract if they became difficult, could extend it if they became valuable. The morality clauses gave studios control over personal lives, who you dated, who you married, whether you could divorce, whether you could have children, whether you could be seen in public drunk, whether you could be arrested. Any behavior that might damage the studio's investment was forbidden. Violation meant contract termination, blacklisting, the end of your career. But the studios weren't just restrictive. They were enabling. They had doctors on staff, not for healthcare, for management. Keep the stars working, keep them profitable, whatever it takes. The doctors had prescription pads and no oversight. Need to lose weight? Here's amphetamines. Need to work 20 hours? More amphetamines. Can't sleep after taking amphetamines all day? Here's barbiturates. The vitamin shots were a studio specialty. B12 shots, they called them. Energy boosters. Everyone got them. The reality was methamphetamine. Straight pharmaceutical meth injected directly into the bloodstream. Instant energy. Instant focus. Instant addiction if you used them regularly, which most stars did because the studios kept giving them. Judy Garland received her first amphetamines at 13. That wasn't unusual. Young actresses needed to be thin, needed to have energy, needed to work adult hours while still being children. The solution was speed. Diet pills were amphetamines. Energy pills were amphetamines. Stay-awake pills were amphetamines. Different names, same drug, same addiction. The barbiturates followed inevitably. You can't take amphetamines all day and then just fall asleep naturally. Your brain won't let you. Your heart is racing. Your thoughts are spinning. You need something to bring you down. Barbiturates do that. Slow everything down. Let you sleep. Create their own addiction that's actually worse than amphetamines because the withdrawal can kill you. The cycle became standard. Uppers to work, downers to sleep, alcohol to smooth the transition between the two. By the 1,940 seconds, most major stars were on this cycle. Some managed it better than others. Some fell apart completely. The studios covered for all of them as long as they kept working. Weight control through speed was routine for actresses. Every young woman signed to a studio was put on a diet immediately. 1,200 calories, 1,000 calories, 800 calories. Starvation rations. When they complained of hunger and fatigue, the solution was amphetamines. Take these pills. You won't be hungry. You'll have energy. You'll be perfect. The medical consequences were ignored. Malnutrition, heart damage, addiction, mental health deterioration. None of that mattered. What mattered was being thin enough to photograph well, being energetic enough to work 18-hour days, being compliant enough to follow orders. The pills achieved all three. The cover-ups were comprehensive. DUI arrests disappeared. Police chiefs were friendly with studio heads. A phone call and the arrest record vanished. The star went home or to a private clinic. The public never knew. Prostitution arrests for male stars were similarly handled. Homosexuality was carefully hidden. Marriages were arranged to provide cover. The publicists worked overtime, managing image while stars fell apart behind the scenes. Press releases about happy marriages while divorce lawyers drafted papers. Stories about clean living while the star was in rehab. Carefully staged photo ops showing health and vitality while the person was dying inside. Abortions were arranged quietly. Pregnancies couldn't interfere with production schedules, couldn't damage the innocent image of young starlets. Studio doctors performed them, or new doctors who would. The actress was back on set within days, sometimes within hours. Keep working, keep profitable, keep the machine running. Arranged marriages hid homosexuality. Rock Hudson married his agent's secretary. The studio facilitated it, publicized it, maintained the fiction for years. Other stars had similar arrangements, beard marriages. They were called protection against scandal, protection against truth. The morphine and heroin came from the same doctors who provided amphetamines and barbiturates. Pain management was the excuse, legitimate sometimes, a back injury, a surgery. But the prescriptions continued long after the pain should have stopped, because the stars were addicted, because they needed it, because stopping meant withdrawal, and withdrawal meant missing work. The system ended in the late 1,950 seconds and 1,960 seconds. Antitrust litigation broke up the studio monopolies. Television changed how people consumed entertainment. The 7-year contract became obsolete. Stars gained independence, formed their own production companies, chose their own projects. Freedom. But freedom came with a price. The stars who'd been on studio drugs for decades were still addicted, still needed the pills, still needed the doctors. But now there was no studio to manage it, no handlers to make sure they didn't take too much, no publicists to cover up the arrests. They were on their own with addictions the studios had created. Many didn't survive the transition. Judy Garland died 9 years after MGM dropped her, still taking the pills they'd started her on at 13. Marilyn Monroe died in 1962, unable to function without the pharmaceutical cocktail studios had normalized. Montgomery Clift drank and pilled himself to death. The list goes on. The legacy was generations of performers destroyed by the machine designed to create them. The studios didn't set out to create addicts. They set out to maximize profit, control every variable, squeeze every drop of productivity from their assets. The addiction was a side effect, an acceptable one as long as the stars kept working. The modern entertainment industry claims to be different, better, more humane. Maybe it is. Or maybe the methods have changed, but the pressure remains the same. The need to be perfect, to work constantly, to never age, to never fail. The pills have different names now. The doctors have better credentials, but the pattern looks familiar. The machine still runs on human fuel, still breaks people. The studio system ended 60 years ago. The stars it destroyed are mostly dead now, but the films remain, perfect, preserved, eternal. We watch Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz and don't think about the pills. Watch Errol Flynn swashbuckling and don't think about the morphine. Watch William Holden in Sunset Boulevard and don't think about how he died. The machine wanted it that way. The performance preserved, the human cost forgotten. Maybe that was always the point. Dr. Max Jacobson arrived in New York in the 1,930 seconds. German refugee, medical degree, specialty in amphetamines. He developed a formula: methamphetamine, multivitamins, hormones, painkillers, different cocktails for different needs, all delivered by injection. He called them vitamin shots. Everyone else called him Dr. Feelgood. His client list was extraordinary. Movie stars, politicians, business executives, President John F. Kennedy. That's not speculation. Kennedy's medical records confirm it. Multiple injections from Jacobson during the presidency. Speed shots, while running the country, while managing the Cuban Missile Crisis, while making decisions that affected millions of lives. Hollywood loved him. One injection and you felt invincible, energized, focused, creative. The exhaustion disappeared. The depression lifted. You could work 20 hours and feel great. The fact that you were getting pharmaceutical methamphetamine didn't matter. It was from a doctor. It was medicine. Therefore, it was safe. Jacobson made house calls. That was part of the service. You didn't go to his office. He came to you, showed up with his black medical bag, rolled up your sleeve, injected whatever cocktail he'd prepared, collected his fee, left. Totally discreet, totally illegal by modern standards, totally normal for Hollywood in the 1,950 seconds and 1,960 seconds. The injections were addictive, obviously. They contained methamphetamine, but Jacobson claimed they weren't, claimed the vitamins and other ingredients balanced everything out, made it safe, made it healthy. The stars believed him because they wanted to believe him, because the alternative was admitting they were addicted to speed. The medical board finally investigated him in the 1,970 seconds, took away his license in 1975, 40 years too late, 40 years of creating addicts, 40 years of injecting celebrities with methamphetamine and calling it medicine. How many careers did he damage? How many people did he help destroy? The number is unknowable. Dr. Hyman Engelberg had a different specialty: barbiturates, sleeping pills, anxiety medication. He was Marilyn Monroe's physician, prescribed the Nembutal that killed her, or helped kill her. The details are still debated, but Engelberg's prescription bottle was there, his pills in her system, his name on the death certificate. Engelberg claimed he didn't know she was suicidal, didn't know she was taking more pills than prescribed, didn't know she was getting prescriptions from multiple doctors. Maybe he didn't, or maybe he didn't want to know. Knowing meant refusing to prescribe. Refusing meant losing a famous client. Losing clients meant losing income. The pattern was consistent. Rich patient, famous patient, demanding patient, doctor who prescribes whatever they ask for. No questions, no oversight, no concern for addiction or overdose. Just write the prescription, collect the fee, move on to the next patient. Dr. Lee Siegel called himself a diet doctor. His specialty was weight loss through pharmaceuticals, specifically through amphetamines. He prescribed them to anyone who wanted to lose weight, which in Hollywood meant everyone. Actresses, actors, directors, producers, anyone who needed to be thin or thought they needed to be thin. The prescriptions were massive: dexedrine, benzedrine, desoxin, which is literally pharmaceutical methamphetamine. 30 pills, 60 pills, 90 pills, refillable prescriptions. No follow-up appointments, no monitoring, just pills, as many as you wanted, as long as you could pay. The weight came off. That was the selling point. The amphetamines suppressed appetite completely. You could eat nothing and feel fine, feel energized, feel focused, feel productive. The fact that you were also becoming addicted to speed was just a side effect, a manageable one, until it wasn't. These doctors all operated the same way. House calls for privacy, cash payments to avoid paper trails, prescriptions without proper examinations, refills without monitoring, total discretion about who their clients were and what they were taking. They were drug dealers with medical licenses, legal drug dealers, protected by credentials and social class. The medical boards looked the other way. These doctors had powerful patients, rich patients, connected patients. Investigating them meant angering people who could make trouble. Easier to ignore it. Easier to assume the doctors knew what they were doing. Easier to let the destruction continue. Prescription drug addiction was socially acceptable in Hollywood. That was the key difference from street drugs. Nobody admitted to being addicted to heroin, but being on medication from a doctor, that was fine. That was medical. That was necessary. The stigma was completely different, even though the addiction was the same. The difference between street drugs and medicine was only the source. Chemically, disoxin is methamphetamine, the same drug sold on streets as meth, but one came from a pharmacy with a prescription. The other came from a dealer in an alley. Same drug, same effects, same addiction. Different social acceptability. This is how Judy Garland could be addicted to amphetamines and barbiturates for 30 years, and nobody called it drug addiction. They called it medication, called it necessary, called it managed by her doctors. The doctors who were creating and maintaining the addiction. The doctors who were getting rich from it. The modern parallel is obvious. Dr. Conrad Murray and Michael Jackson, propofol, an anesthetic, being used as a sleeping aid, being administered by a personal physician in Jackson's home. Murray claimed he was treating Jackson's insomnia. The more accurate description is that he was enabling an addiction. The addiction killed Jackson. The pattern repeats. Rich patient, enabling doctor, inappropriate prescriptions, addiction, death. The decades change, the drugs change, the pattern remains. Because the fundamental dynamic hasn't changed. Patients with unlimited money and unlimited demand. Doctors willing to provide whatever they ask for. Medical licenses used as cover for drug dealing. The estate lawsuits follow. The family sues the doctor, claims malpractice, claims negligence, claims wrongful death. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. Either way, the patient is still dead. The doctor gets sanctioned or loses their license. Too late. The damage is done. The addiction was created, maintained, and monetized until it killed someone. How many Hollywood doctors are doing this right now? How many celebrities are on inappropriate prescriptions from physicians who care more about fees than patient welfare? The number is unknowable, but the pattern is familiar. The history suggests it's happening. The deaths keep coming. Different names, same story. Dr. Feelgood, Dr. Hyman Engelberg, Dr. Lee Siegel, Dr. Conrad Murray. The names change, the credentials differ, the methods evolve, but the core remains the same. Doctors who use their licenses to provide drugs to rich patients who can't get them any other way. Legal drug dealers, protected by medical degrees, enabled by patients who don't want to admit they're addicts, covered up until someone dies, then briefly exposed before the pattern starts again with new names and new drugs and new victims. The medical boards are more vigilant now. The DEA monitors prescriptions, but money still buys access, fame still buys discretion, and doctors willing to prescribe inappropriately still exist. As long as there are rich addicts, there will be doctors willing to enable them. That's the lesson. That's the pattern. That's the history repeating itself endlessly. The death toll from Hollywood's golden age is staggering. Judy Garland at 47. Barbiturates. Errol Flynn at 50. Heart attack from decades of abuse. Barbara Payton at 39. Liver and heart failure. Gig Young at 64. Murder-suicide while intoxicated. Veronica Lake at 50. Hepatitis and renal failure. William Holden at 63. Bled to death, drunk and alone. Those are just the ones we've covered. The list extends much further. John Barrymore dead at 60 from cirrhosis. Marilyn Monroe at 36. Barbiturate overdose. Montgomery Clift at 45. Heart attack after years of pills and alcohol. Judy Holliday at 43. Cancer accelerated by addiction. Alan Ladd at 50. Alcohol and sedatives. The names accumulate like casualty reports from a war, because it was a war. The dream factory versus the dreamers. The system versus the stars. The demand for perfection versus human limitation. The machine always wins these wars. The machine grinds up people and produces entertainment. The entertainment is eternal. The people are disposable. Elvis Presley died in 1977, 42 years old. Prescription drugs, multiple doctors, dozens of prescriptions, uppers and downers, and painkillers. The same cycle that killed Judy Garland. The same enabling doctors. The same pattern of addiction masked as medical treatment. Different era, same story. The patterns remain. Modern Hollywood claims to be different, more enlightened, more aware, more humane. Mental health is discussed openly now. Addiction is treated as disease rather than moral failure. Rehab is normalized. Sobriety is celebrated. Progress. But the deaths continue. Heath Ledger in 2008. Prescription drugs. Philip Seymour Hoffman in 2014. Heroin. Both talented, both successful, both dead from addiction. The substances change. The circumstances vary. The outcome remains the same. Fame doesn't protect you. Money doesn't save you. Talent doesn't matter when you're dead. The pressures that created golden age addiction haven't disappeared. They've evolved. The studio system is gone, but the demands remain. Be perfect. Look young. Work constantly. Maintain relevance. Compete with thousands of others. Do it all while being watched by millions. Handle the scrutiny. Handle the criticism. Handle the pressure. Don't break. Social media added new dimensions. The judgment is constant now. Real time. Immediate. Every photograph analyzed. Every statement dissected. Every imperfection magnified. The pressure to be perfect increased exponentially. The temptation to use substances to manage that pressure increased with it. The pills have different names now. OxyContin instead of morphine. Xanax instead of Seconal. Adderall instead of Benzedrine. The chemistry is slightly different. The effects are the same. The addiction is the same. The destruction is the same. Better marketing doesn't make them safer. What did we learn from the golden age? That the dream factory has a price. That the price is paid in human lives. That beauty and talent aren't protection. That fame amplifies problems rather than solving them. That the system enables addiction as long as productivity continues. That by the time anyone intervenes, it's usually too late. The human cost of entertainment is rarely calculated. How many lives destroyed to produce the films we love? How many people broke themselves to make us laugh or cry or feel inspired? The movies don't show that cost. The performances are pristine. The stars are preserved at their peak. The suffering is edited out. Why are we still fascinated by these stories? Why do we keep telling them? Perhaps because they reveal something true about the price of dreams, not just Hollywood dreams. All dreams pursued at the cost of everything else. The sacrifice required, the toll extracted, the human limitations that eventually assert themselves no matter how much chemistry you use to suppress them. The tragedy isn't that these people were weak. The tragedy is that they were human. They had limits. They had pain. They had problems. The system demanded they transcend those limits, demanded perfection, demanded the impossible. Chemistry promised to deliver the impossible. For a while, it did, until it didn't. Judy Garland singing Over the Rainbow at 16. Beautiful, pure, heartbreaking. She was high on amphetamines during that recording. The pills they gave her at 13. The pills that would kill her at 47. The performance is perfect. The cost was her life. Was it worth it? Who gets to decide? The films remain. That's what survives. The Wizard of Oz, Sunset Boulevard, Captain Blood, Sullivan's Travels, Bridge on the River Kwai. Perfect. Eternal. Preserved. The people who made them are gone. Destroyed by addiction. Destroyed by pressure. Destroyed by the system that created them. Their addictions are mostly forgotten now. Relegated to footnotes. Trivia. Did you know Judy Garland was addicted to pills? Most people don't know, don't care. Just want to watch the movie. Want the entertainment. Want the escape. Don't want to think about what it cost. The performances are immortal. That's the paradox. The people died, but the work survived. Perhaps that's what they would have wanted. To be remembered for the work, for the talent, for the moments of transcendence captured on film, not for the addiction, not for the suffering, not for the pathetic deaths. Or perhaps they would have preferred to live, to have normal lives, to have been happy, to have survived past 40 or 50 or 60, to have seen their grandchildren, to have died peacefully in bed surrounded by family, to have been human beings instead of content. We'll never know. They're gone. All we have are the films, the performances, the images preserved in celluloid and digital formats. Judy, young and hopeful. Errol, handsome and daring. Barbara, beautiful and doomed. William, golden and lost. Frozen at their peaks. Eternal. The dream factory continues. New stars, new pressures, new substances, new casualties. The pattern repeats with different names and faces. The machine still runs on human fuel, still produces entertainment, still breaks people, still calls it success. They gave us dreams. They paid for those dreams with their lives, their bodies destroyed, their minds shattered, their potential wasted. All so we could sit in the dark and watch them be perfect for 90 minutes. All so we could escape our lives by watching them destroy theirs. That's the legacy. That's the price. That's what we inherited from Hollywood's golden age. Perfect films, dead stars. The knowledge that the dreams we consume were created by people who paid impossible prices. And the uncomfortable question of whether we're complicit in that price by continuing to demand the dreams. The films will last forever. The people who made them are long gone. Perhaps that's the only immortality available. The work survives. The artist doesn't. The performance is eternal. The performer is forgotten. The dream remains. The dreamer dies. That's the price. That's always been the price. That's always going to be the price. They gave us dreams. We took them, and we're still watching those dreams 60, 70, 80 years later, still benefiting from their sacrifice, still consuming what they created, still not thinking about what it cost. Maybe that's the final tragedy. Not that they died for our entertainment, but that we barely noticed.